There you go. Good
My hero, it's so good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you. Oh, not bad. I've got a bit of a sore throat this week, but having a talking job, that really helps. So, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I got all kinds of stuff to talk about, and I just forwarded you a huge piece about the Area 51 Chronicles. So if you want to post that on Alternative Reality and wherever it is you want to post it at, it's I think it's pretty interesting. It's kind of the progression of how Area 51 was exposed since this week. 2 million people have signed a petition to supposedly rush the gate, which isn't even a gate. It's a bunch of posts connected by a single chain out in the beautiful Tickaboo Valley in Nevada. So including Snooki from Jersey Shore. So Snooki is going to lead the charge. So there you go.
So yes,
are we on?
Yes, we're on. We're recording, and
okay.
I'll post that while you're doing this.
Okay, good. So let's rock and roll with this stuff. I just the reason I put the Area 51 Chronicles out there is to show everybody that I started this whole thing back in 1990 with my interview with Bob Lazar, and then going out in 91 and getting it on the front page of the LA Times, and then doing sightings, and now it can be told, and Strange Universe, and all this. And it's interesting that the premiere episode of Ancient Aliens, which opened the season, was all about research that I did 30 years ago about Bob Lazar and Element 115. And now you've got 2 million people signing a petition that want to know the truth of what's going on at Area 51 and want to rush the gates, and here I am sitting in federal. If the promoters had been smart, the Tickaboo Valley is a huge, beautiful place, and you just rent it out from Steve Medlin, who's a farmer there, a rancher actually, and they could have done alien stock. The 50-year anniversary of Woodstock could have been alien stock out in the Tickaboo Valley, and they could have had Blink 182 and all these bands that have been influenced by the whole E.T. Ancient Alien kind of movement. So there's that. God, so much to talk about. Anyway, JP, it's so great to talk to you. Crazy things going on with me. First off, let's talk a little bit about the California predictions that I made. I predicted first the fires up in Northern California, then I predicted the fires in Southern California. Then I talked about in May that I saw this huge white fist hitting the planet. This blue-white fist is what I thought.
This call is from a federal prison.
Which then in May you had over 400 tornadoes all across the United States. Actually weird, because not from the heat, but because it was actually getting cooler. And I said at the time, I think on the blast here, that well, that's not quite it. It's not quite the shuddering that I was feeling of the entire planet. And then in May, you had an earthquake that happened in Chile that shook the entire South American continent, that was felt as far north as Venezuela. Then I talked about June. We talked about this over and over again, talking about late June being these massive earthquakes that were going to hit California. Well, we haven't had any big earthquakes in California for over 20 years, and I missed it by 4 days because it happened on the 4th of July. And everybody needs to know that those earthquakes were epicentered at the China Lake Naval Weapons Test Center. And there's been a number of massive earthquakes that have come out of that same area. They kept dancing around the fact, they kept calling them the Ridgecrest quakes, but they kept dancing around the fact that these quakes actually happened at a military test center. Now here's the danger, and they also happened on a fault line that they'd never seen before. So now you have a crack that's visible from space that literally looks like California trying to physically and politically separate itself from the rest of the United States. So what's coming next, I can't even imagine. And one of two things are going on. Either they did this purposely to relieve the pressure on the San Andreas fault line and all the other various fault lines, or you really do have a position where maybe the Edgar Casey, California breaking off into the ocean, Gordon Michael Scallion stuff might happen just later than most people think. So, take a look at that. I mean, over the next 6 months, and I talked about this, you're going to have quakes in the anywhere from the 4.5 to the 6-point range. The biggest place you need to watch is Barstow, because if the Barstow Gap goes, then that's because Barstow sits on a crack that literally goes down about 130 miles into the earth of pure nothing. And if Barstow disappears, then you're looking at a massive activation of the San Andreas Fault. Okay, I spoke to Meanwhile, you have something called the First Step Act that was passed by the Trump administration. There's about 186,000 people in the federal system. And the First Step Act was supposed to basically close ridiculous camps like this. It was put together by by Jared Kushner and by Kushner's dad, who spent 4 years in a federal camp. And these camps they're ridiculous. They're absurd. There's no security. There's no fence. There's no nothing. Anybody could get up and, ride a bicycle off this place any day of the week. And Trump wants them closed. He says, why are these people, people just sit around and watch TV as opposed to being out making money, doing things. And it's the weirdest social experiment I've ever seen. Because you literally have multimillionaires here, white upper class, white collar guys, mixed in with like Mexican guys who are smuggling people across the border, and drug dealers, and it's crazy. This is going to make a great comedy. I'm going to call it Club Fed and do a comedy about this place when I get out of here. But the First Step Act managed to only free 3,500 people. 3,500 people. 1,500 of those people, the minute they got out, got turned over to ICE, and they got shipped back to their home country. So only 2,000 people were released. And now we're being told that the BOP is just going to ignore this act altogether. And that it's basically tough luck, and they're not going to let anybody go, and that now you have to go through the courts to do all this stuff, which is exactly what I've done. You've got to give a notice to the warden to say, I'd like to be released on compassionate release. If you're over 60 years old, they give you 66% of your sentence, but then there's all kinds of other stuff that goes on top of that. So I put in a motion to the court. Now, my people spoke to Jeremy Gordon, who's a big-time attorney that does all kinds of cases for people in prison. And, Gordon said, yeah, you can get out on compassionate release. That's the way to go because I've been blinded in my right eye. I've lost 2 teeth. My various other health issues were out of control because the health care here is completely non-existent. And he said, it'll cost you $5,000 for me to get you out of there. So I suppose I could be free tomorrow, if I can only come up with $5,000. So if anybody wants to foot the bill for my legal bills, I could probably make that, I guarantee you, in maybe 2 lectures, that I could put together. And the reason they're not letting anybody go, and I don't know why nobody realizes this, is the same people that run the prison systems that draw out bonds on all these people here as basically warehoused commodities are the exact same people that have enslaved our young people to the tune of $1.7 trillion in student loans, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the bond system and structure is what's the basis of all of this, and it's why they won't let anybody go. Because under the First Step Act, under the mathematics of it, I should have been released 9 months ago, to give you an idea. And now I've put in a motion of the court, but because I'm operating pro per, they're basically just sitting on it. Okay, so meanwhile, what else is going on? So breathless here with all the other things. The good news is that I think I talked about this before, but Sands of Time has actually been optioned for a TV series by a production company and a group of producers that have about 12 Emmys between them. So I'm working with Sean Stone, Oliver Stone's son, now on basically revamping the pilot, getting the books out there, kind of updating them for a more modern audience, and we're getting that all out there. Let me see. So the counter for meanwhile, with the rest of my legal case stuff, although other people's legal stuff is boring, I put in my appeal on May 22nd. The government asked for 30 more days. They submitted a 79-page appeal, even though they only get 30 pages. And I'm responding to that, and I needed more time because I'm doing this pretty much all on my own with some paralegals that are helping me. So my response to their response to my appeal is due September 4th. So that's what's going down. And at the same time, let me see the one I think. God, I was going to write all this stuff out. Talked about the predictions. Talked about the Area 51 thing. Talked about the other stuff. But yeah, I had my phones taken away. They're giving me no help here at the prison, by the way. They're supposed to, under the Sixth Amendment, allow you access to fax machines, access to private phones to be able to talk to my paralegals, and they just said no. I mean, the abuse here has been terrible. They've basically labeled me a, quote, sovereign citizen, and then I somehow questioned the voluntary income tax system of the United States, which I've never done. I said that sovereign citizens are stupid, and I've claimed to be a citizen of the sovereign Republic of California, and I never ever questioned the voluntary income tax system of the United States. I told people, if you want to volunteer, there are ways to unvolunteer from the system, but if you want to volunteer, then absolutely volunteer. There's all kinds of benefits to it. They even sent spies, by the way, to my lectures, an IRS spy, to take me out to dinner to ask me about this stuff, and I said, no, it's too complicated. You just pay your taxes. That's just kind of the way it goes. And Anyway, so that's all the legal nonsense. Okay, now let me project forward a little bit here. Okay, once again, I talked about how Trump's going to be reelected. That's no problem in 2020, but the real period of time that Trump has to be aware of is 2022. It's also going to be kind of strange because I think there's going to be a dark horse Democrat. I don't think it's anybody that's on the roster now. I think it's somebody that comes from out of the blue, some very, very wealthy billionaire guy. Could be somebody like Mark Cuban or something, but I don't think any of the Democratic contenders that you're looking at now. If they put in Joe Biden, which I doubt, but they probably have to put on good old Kamala Harris, who was basically Willie Brown, who was the mayor of San Francisco. She was his hoe. That's how she got all the power in San Francisco. And she's part Jamaican. And she's part Jamaican, and her dad's Jamaican, and her mother's from India. But she's playing the whole black racial card, so the Democrats are going to have to put somebody in that's a woman, somebody of color. Joe Biden is just losing his mind, and I think it's going to be somebody from out of the blue that nobody expects. The trade war is interesting. It's going down. Everybody that's in the stock market, I would not worry about it at all. I think that within, I talked about September, it might be as far as October, that we're going to cut a really good trade deal with China. The Chinese definitely need us way more than we need them. The fact that they're putting tariffs on their agricultural supplies is absurd because they need food. I mean, by 2025, we're going to need an entire new planet just to feed the population of China. So for them to be putting tariffs on food that's actually coming out of the United States, which they desperately need, but it's going to lead to a revamping of American industry. And as far as people in the markets go, I would double up on stocks like Disney, Apple, Intel, because the big dip that you're seeing in the market now, I still predict that the market's going to go to 28,000.
This call is from a federal prison.
And at that point, you're going to see some serious talk about Trump basically just skirting the entire Federal Reserve, going back on some kind of gold standard. And one other interesting case in point, the whole rest of the world thinks that the United States is the only viable economy. It's now dollars in circulation. There are now more $100 bills in circulation than $1 bills. And most of these are actually being held outside the country. They're being held as a reserve currency by people all over the world. Now, I don't know if it has to do with drug deals. I don't know if it has to do with, Colombian cartels or the Russians or whatever else, but it's the number one reserve currency on the entire planet. And again, there are more $100 bills in circulation now than there are $1 bills. And that's a big deal. Melissa's doing great, by the way, even after being completely dissed and totally interfered with by, her brother and her family and whatever else. She's got 4 jobs now. She's working for, she's doing all kinds of wonderful stuff at the Coliseum. She's back in the world of sports, which she loves. So she's able to basically work for the Trojans, for the Rams, for the hockey team, the LA Kings. She's out there, as an ambassador for Royal Canin Pet Food, which is the best pet food in the world and is the stuff that we fed our cats. So she's doing well. She still doesn't have a place to live. She's still sleeping on a blow-up bed on a friend of mine's floor because she hasn't been able to save up the money to, get anywhere to actually solid to live, but I hope that's going to change. There's going to be I think there's a lot of generous people out there that are going to help us. Anybody who wants to help Melissa, she's got you can actually go on PayPal, and you can help her out there at either paypal.me/help Melissa, and or you could go directly. And here's one other actually good piece of news. There's been a lot of people out there that may listen to this, listen to the blog blast, and may not be able to contact me because the CoreLink system, you only get about 30 people for your emails. But I now have a number. It's a text inmate system.com. Anybody that wants to text me, they can actually text me directly from their phone, and that number is 971-260-9726. That's 971-260-9726. 971-260-9726. So from your phone, you can actually text me, Dr. Sean David Morton, on this. But it's great to see that all the things that I started 30 years ago, but I was also told that, Sean, they're going to get you. I mean, you mess with all that psychic stuff, and so they think you're easy to discredit, and you're too funny to kill, but you mess with $1 billion base, and they're going to mess you up. JP, I can't thank you enough for your friendship and for your dedication and for allowing me to talk to people for a little brief period of time. Thank you so much.
Bless you, Sean, and I'll see you soon.
All right, brother. Thank you. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.